time of the dead, and they should be judged.
Those are the ones that judgment was given unto them. They were found worthy, but go ahead.
And that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth.
So they go live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. Verse number 5, not 20 and 5.
Revelation 20 and 5.
This is when the Lord had established his kingdom.
But the rest of the dead live not again.
Until when?
Until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection.
Again, you had those that came up in the first resurrection. You're going to have 1,000 years of nothing but peace. And then you're going to have what's known as the great white throne judgment. That's the second resurrection. I'm not dealing with that. Verse number 6. Go ahead. What does he say about those that come up in the first resurrection?
Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection.
Why is that?
On such the second death hath no power.
They don't have to worry about being judged. They've been judged already. They're going to get into God's kingdom. He said on the such death, he said on such the second death have no power. On the second death, he's talking about eternal damnation. He's talking about them that's going into the lake of fire. But what are they going to be?
But they shall be priests of God and of Christ. He shall reign with him 1,000 years.
We're not going to do it. You can read Revelation in the 5th chapter, verse number 10. It tells you, and they reigned with him on the earth for 1,000 years. But now, go to the handout. Because just as the Lord ceased from his work on the seventh day, we're going to see that man is going to cease from his labor on the seventh day. So the Lord came back and he established his kingdom. It's going to be 1,000 years of nothing but peace. 2 Peter, we read where it said, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. To show the significance of Israel to God, Deuteronomy the 32nd chapter, verse 8 says, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people, talking about the boundaries of man's existence, according to the number of the children of Israel. You got 12 hours. Jacob had 12 sons, and that made up the 12 tribes of Israel. You have 12 hours in a day, you have 12 hours in the night. There's 12 months in a year. And man, as he exists, as a flesh and blood being, is not going to go beyond 12 days. And the 12th day, as far as man's creation, as it applies to the overall existence of God's creation, is the 7th day of man's existence. And it is God's day of rest for man. If you look at where it says, and we'll look at the numbers and they'll bear it out. On the left-hand side, it says God's creation. If you go back into Genesis, the 1st chapter, and it tells you what God did on each day. The 1st day was created the light, the 2nd the firmament, the 3rd day trees and the grass, the 4th day the sun and the moon and the stars. He didn't create them on that day, but I'm not dealing with that. It's telling you that he made them. He was just a source that brought them into existence. They were created when he created the heavens and the earth in the beginning. But the 5th day, the fish and the fowls, and on the 6th day, he created man. So that was the 6th day for God, but that was man's first day of work. And on the 7th day, what did God do? He rested on the 7th day, did he not? But then that was man's 2nd day of work. But when it say God rested, what he did then was he worked to bring man into his day of rest. So you had the 1st day, the 2nd day for man, the 3rd day, which is God's 8th day, the 9th day, which is man's 4th day of work, the 5th day, which is God's 10th day, the 6th day of work, which is God's 11th day concerning his creation, and then the 12th day, as far as God's creation as it applies to man, is the 7th day. That's when man is going to enter into his rest. When Jesus sets up his kingdom here on this earth, and you have nothing but 1,000 years of peace, that's man's day of rest. That's his 7th day. It's the 12th day as it applies to God's creation on the overall existence of man. From the time that he brought earth to the point where man can inhabit it, to the time that there will be no flesh and blood man. Because what happens if you continue to read in Revelation the 20th chapter, after the end of the 1,000 years, you're going to have the great white throne judgment. That's when all the other dead are going to stand before the Lord and be judged. Those that are found worthy at that time are going to get into the kingdom. The kingdom I'm talking about then is the Father's kingdom. But those that are not found worthy are going to be cast in the lake of fire. There will be no more flesh and blood man after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. All spirit being. But I'm not dealing with that. But that's what his Sabbath day or day of rest is pointing to. The last 1,000 years of man's existence will be nothing but peace on this earth. Turn over to Isaiah, the 65th chapter. Because the Lord had Isaiah tell us what some of the things that's going to be taking place at this time. See, there's one thing about the Word of God. The Word of God, if God is telling you something, you can read it in the book. You can't read nothing what's going to happen to you if you go to heaven. Nowhere. You can't even read you going to heaven, let alone what's supposed to take place when you get there. But this is how the world's going to be at this time, when the Lord sets up his kingdom, during this time of peace. 65, pick it up at verse number 17. Go ahead when you get there.
For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind.
And the reason he told you that, when Jesus told you about his second coming in Matthew, he told you there was going to be a great disturbance in the heaven in Matthew, the 24th chapter. He says, the sun and the moon weren't going to get that light, and the stars were going to fall down from heaven. John told you, Isaiah tells you, how the sky was going to roll back like a scroll, which is making way for the coming of the Lord. So he's saying, behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. The earth is still the same. It's just going to be a new existence for man, because God is now going to be in control. Man ain't going to rule nothing no more after the Lord makes his second coming. He said, behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind. But what?
But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing.
What about her people?
And her people a joy.
See, her people ain't enjoying over there right now because them ain't her people. The joy is going to come when Israel, true Israel, goes back to the promised land. Again, Israel is a black people that was scattered into slavery all over this world. And we're going to remain there, as Jesus said, until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. When their time is up, when the Lord comes to take back this world, is when we go home as a people. But go ahead.
And I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people.
That's when the Lord is back. Israel is back in the land. He said, I'm going to rejoice in Jerusalem because he's going to be headquartered in Jerusalem. He told you that when Gabriel came to Mary. And he told her what was going to take place when she conceived. She was a virgin. And he said he was going to sit upon the throne of his father David and reign over the house of Jacob forever. He was talking about what Jesus was going to do. He says, and I will rejoice in Jerusalem because he's going to be headquartered there. And joy in my people. Go ahead.
And the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying.
Well, what else is going to take place at this time? Because what's going to happen is men are going to go back to living long lives. Longevity will be the norm of the day. Go ahead.
There shall be no more thence an infant of days.
You won't have infants dying of crib death or dying early. Go ahead.
Nor an old man that hath not filled his day.
Listen to what it says. Go ahead.
For the child shall die 100 years old.
You're going to look at somebody, if they die at 100, we marvel at them right now. Then it would be saying, man, it was a baby. Adam lived 930 years. Methuselah 969 years. But then in Genesis, the 6th chapter, the Lord said, I'm going to cut man's age down. I'm going to 120. Then he went into Psalms. He said, I'm going to take it down to 60. A man of strength, I might give him 10 more years. And when you look at us as a people, we really struggle. We live here quick. I don't know no black people that got no high blood pressure. We have things happen to us that don't happen to other people. And that's because we live a stress But we are up under a stress, which is called curse, that other people don't have to deal with. But at that time, we're going to go back to living a long life. He said it will be a child that died 100 years. But what about the sinner?
But the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed.
See, it's still going to be death. Nobody's going to get out of that 1,000 years. Just like the Lord told Adam, in the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, in that day you shall surely die. People say, well, Adam lived 930 years. He didn't die in that day. Yes, he did. But Peter said to the Lord, a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. So during the time of Jesus' reign, during that time of peace, men will go back to living long lives. Turn over to Isaiah, the 11th chapter. Because you want to enter into this rest. And here the Lord had Isaiah to continue to tell us about what's going to take place during this time. 11:1. Sorry. 11:1. You go ahead when you get there.
And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots.
And this is talking about none other than Jesus. But drop down to verse number 4. Go ahead.
But with righteousness shall he judge the poor.
This is when he's coming back with his salvation. He said, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor and do what?
And reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth.
Go ahead.
And with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked.
This is the time when he's going to evoke what he said, vengeance is mine, said the Lord. So if he says that there must be a time when he's going to come and pour out his wrath or take his vengeance on man. He said, but he's going to smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Go ahead.
And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins.
And look at what takes place on the earth during this time. Because I said it's going to be nothing but peace for 1,000 years. Go ahead.
The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the king.
We know this is future, because you can't have no wolf dwelling with no lamb today. And if the leopard lie down with the goat ain't going to get up today. Even the animals, the beasts of the field will have a different spirit about them. Because they're going to go back to being vegetarians. They won't be carnivorous at this time. He said the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. What about the lion? Go ahead.
The calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them.
Again, you're going to have the animals will have a different spirit about them, if you will. Then a young man tried to climb into the cave, but the tigers in the zoo didn't make it. This ain't the time. You can't even have a dog and be too safe. They'll turn around and bite you. And you feed them every day. Go ahead, verse number 7.
And the cow and the bear shall feed. Their young ones shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like the ox.
Again, no more carnivorous beast. Everybody, it's going to be vegetarians at this time. It's going to be nothing but peace on this earth for 1,000 years. That's what the 7-day Sabbath is pointing to. Go ahead.
And the sucking child shall play on the hole of the ass. And the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den.
Like Paul had stretched his hand out when he was gathering gathering the sticks, and the viper bit him. At this time, you ain't got to worry about no snake biting you. You ain't got to worry about nothing. Nothing but peace at this time. What does he say?
They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain.
Why is that?
For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea.
Ain't nobody going to be walking up to you talking about Merry Christmas at that time. Nobody's going to be talking about the folly at that time. Everybody's going to know Santa Claus was not real, but God is. At this time, everybody's going to know the true and living God. And I don't mock people. I did the same thing out of ignorance. I hung my Christmas lights. I listened to the carols. I did the whole bit, just like everybody else. Spent all my money like I was crazy. Getting presents that I couldn't afford. Why? Because you get caught up in the tradition of men. But at this time, everybody's going to be keeping God's holy day. from his weekly Sabbath to his annual high day. There will be no false worship at this time. He said, they're not going to hurt nor destroy all my holy mountain. He said, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord. He said, as the waters cover the sea. Go ahead.
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
And what shall the Gentiles do?
To it shall the Gentiles seek.
But what about God's rest during this time?
And his rest shall be glorious.
And that's what the weekly Sabbath is pointing to. One last place, Isaiah 14. Because Isaiah lets us know this rest ain't just for Israel. It's going to be peace all over this world. Nothing but peace. You know that's future. Ain't no peace today. And for us, really ain't no peace. 14, verse number 1. 14 and 1. Because this is future. Go ahead.
For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel.
What is he going to do with Israel?
And set them in their own land.
That's at this time. See, even though this claim that they the Jew, ain't no peace over there. Ain't no rest. He said the Lord's going to have mercy on Jacob and go choose Israel and set them in their own land. This is when he takes them back to the promised land. But go ahead.
And the strangers shall be joined with them.
And what are they going to do?
And they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
Go ahead.
And the people shall take them. Bring them to their place.
Go ahead.
And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids.
This is when Israel returns home. But they're not going to treat them like we were treated. But go ahead.
And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Other nations are going to serve God's people at this time, but I'm not dealing with that. What is he going to do? Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondages wherein thou wast made to serve.
This is in the day when the Lord returns. This is when he sets up his kingdom. That's the time that we as a people are going to have rest. He said it's going to come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. Jump down to verse number 7, and this is it. Because what's going to be taking place over the whole world at this time? Go ahead.
The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth into singing.
Again, the Lord's Sabbath, the seventh day, a day of rest, both now and future. I want to thank you for your time.